Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. Today we're going to be doing a reading update for this month, and I'm going to be reviewing Alan Dean Foster, To the Vanishing Point, as well as The Shrinking Man by Richard Matheson. Stay tuned. Okay everyone, let's just make something clear from the beginning. I'm not usually into science fiction. After all, this is a horror channel, right? But with both of these books, there was the sort of hint that there was going to be some horror in there as well. And boy did they deliver. So without further ado, let's get going. Okay, let's start off with Alan Dean Foster's To the Vanishing Point. Now, this is the first Alan Dean Foster book I've read. From what I hear, he's a little bit more of a science fiction writer, but I gave this book a go because of the cover. This is just absolutely awesome. And believe me, it is not just science fiction. There is science fiction, there is horror, there is fantasy, a sort of a magical realism. There's all sort of things mixed up in the story. So what is it about? It's about a family of four. They are the Sonderbergs, I believe, or the Sondersons, and they take a road trip to Vegas in this motorhome that they've hired, and they usually fly. And the reason they've taken this particular road trip is because the father wants to make it an educational tour for his youngest son and the daughter. But on the road trip, on the way there, at the beginning, they are just bored. It doesn't work out the way they want. The young daughter is just hiding in her headphones, listening to music, and doesn't care about anything that's happening outside. And the son, who's a little bit overweight, well, maybe not a little bit, all he's interested is in snacks and finding some food. The mother's a bit fed up, and basically it's, why the hell did we take this road trip? Why didn't we just fly to Vegas like we usually did? Okay, then what happens is they pick up a hitchhiker, and it's this kind of beautiful woman. She's almost enigmatic, mysterious, otherworldly, and she's got no luggage, but she's sitting on the side of the desert, and they pick her up because they're worried about her. Now, she's a very strange woman, and she tells them that she's on her way to sing a song to soothe this creature called the Spinner, who is basically responsible for keeping the fabric of reality knitted properly, and that it's coming apart. Now, the Sonderbergs don't really know anything about this, but they pick her up, and this boring trip is about to take a turn for the worst, for the better. We don't know yet, but it's going to get very, very interesting. Okay, and then without giving too much away from now on in, because it's actually the kind of story where it's better to go in kind of blind, because you'll be pleasantly surprised by all the twists and turns. They basically go and fill up at this very dodgy petrol station with the even more dodgy petrol attendant, and then they get picked up by police, and things just go to hell and way beyond. And there's all sorts of different things that happen to this family. At the back of the book it talks about different realities, and the question is, are they ever going to go to Vegas? Because they just take wrong turns all the time, and they find themselves in strange places, in worlds, and all sorts. Okay, so what are some of the things that I really enjoyed about this story? Well, I thought there were some fantastic world building. He's a very, very descriptive, very creative writer, and it's also very fast-paced, kind of easy to get into, hell of a lot of fun, very entertaining. The characters were very well developed, most of them, and what's really interesting about this particular family is that all four of them, even the children, kind of undergo not so much a transformation, but yeah, they have these story arcs, and they become very interesting by the end of the novel. This mouse character is incredible, and they pick up another couple of I would call hitchhikers, travelers on the way, who are awesome characters. It just makes it very, very interesting. I also really enjoyed the fact that there were so many twists and turns. You never know what's going to happen in this particular novel. But I'm going to get to the disappointments just now. I think that maybe there could have been a bit more horror. Okay, that brings us to what I didn't like. There was a really awesome, kind of gory horror section towards the beginning, and I would have liked them to explore that particular world or that particular reality a little bit more, because it was very interesting and very dark. And then the story kind of takes a big turn into sort of science fiction, fantasy. And yes, although the book is dark throughout, I would have preferred a little bit more of a horror content, because that's who I am. But still, altogether, this is a fantastic story. I gave it 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I would highly recommend it to anyone, even those of you that just enjoy horror. That is To the Vanishing Point. Okay, next up we have Richard Matheson, The Shrinking Man. Now, I had read 2 books by him prior to this, and that was Duel and I Am Legend. And both of those are fantastic novels, primarily horror novels. This seems from the cover, kind of corny, but it's awesome, that this is more like a science fiction novel. Now, I have to say, from when I read the blurb, when I talked about this book, that all I knew was that it was about a man who basically shrinks down to tiny size and he ends up fighting the spider. There is so much more to this novel than meets the eye, and that's what I'm going to talk about just now. Okay, so let's see what this book is about. Now, it's a very strange opening page, where chapter 1 is more like a paragraph, and what happens is this man, Scott Curry, is on a boat and he gets sprayed accidentally by some kind of radioactive, actually I'm not even sure what it's called, by chemicals, by radioactive chemical, while he's sunbathing on a boat, and that makes him start to shrink. Now, I found the science of this completely ludicrous, but I didn't think about it too much, because as I said, I'm not really into science fiction, but it's just the idea that this guy would shrink is physically impossible, it's not going to happen, but that's not what the story is really about. Then what happens, and this is a very interesting structural thing with the novel, is on the first page, chapter 2, we find him less than a foot tall, no, not even that, less than 2 inches or 3 inches tall. So it's obviously much later on, and he's running away from the spider, and he's running for his life, and he's trapped in the cellar, and so we need to find out how the hell did he get there. And the second chapter, that's what it's all about, and it's almost like a kind of survival horror. Then what happens, and this happens throughout the novel, there's almost flashbacks. So you go back and it goes through his life from that point where he starts shrinking, and you see what happens to him as his humanity is stripped away from him. He loses his job, he loses his life, he loses his family, he's got a wife and a young 5-year-old daughter, and basically he loses his integrity, everything about him. And it's a psychological effect that this thing has on him, and I think that is the most important part of the novel. So what we have here is a kind of combination of a survival horror, where we have a lot of action sequences in the cellar, which is almost this guy's prison, and he's getting smaller and smaller, and he's trying to feed himself, he's trying to find water, and he's trying to run away from this giant spider. There are some very tense scenes, it's very exciting. And then on the other hand, you see this man, and it's not just about his humanity, it's his manhood that is being stripped away. He basically is losing authority over his daughter, he's losing his wife, he eventually becomes small enough so that he can't function sexually, he loses his job, he loses any kind of authority that he has, or control that he has over his life. He becomes completely helpless. And it's very interesting because you see the way that he reacts to this. It's almost like a disease or a terminal disease, but there is no cure. There's absolutely nothing that he can do. And I think a lot of people will find him very unlikable in those scenes, But you have to ask yourself, because when he throws fits, he gets into a rage, and he starts moaning, and he feels helpless, and he feels like victimized. But what would you do in that situation? And I think a very interesting thing as well is when this book was actually written. It was written in the 50s, so the whole idea of being a man, the man of the family, was this idea of size. You're the big man, and you have control over your life. What would happen if that control gets completely ripped away, and you're stripped of everything? Everything. Now, during the scenes where there's survival horror, he has lost what makes him a person already, basically. And all that's left is the will to survive. And he often questions, when he's in this prison, when he's in the cellar, what is the purpose of me carrying on? Maybe I should just end it. Why am I even bothering to try and run away from the spider? Why am I even bothering to struggle, find my way to get some water? A very, very interesting novel in that case, in that sense. It's sort of finding out the meaning of what it is. What are we here for? Why do we even bother? Because when everything's stripped away, you might as well just lie down and accept our fate. We're dead. So that brings us to what I liked, and I pretty much probably covered already all of that. It's a survival horror, which I always enjoy. A lot of very tense action sequences, a lot of chase scenes, but then you've got that psychological aspect of what it's like to be a man in a child's body and going through a hell of a lot. He goes through a lot in this novel, and how you would react to that, and I found that fascinating. And as a character, you actually feel for him, and I think you feel more for him when he's in the cellar. And I thought the ending itself was absolutely superb. It really took me by surprise. It was something completely different. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed this novel. Okay, so what did I not like? And this probably lost this particular book a star from me. But I found that some of the chase scenes and some of the scenes in the cellar were kind of repetitive. He's ends up being like an inch tall, and he's running from the spider, and obviously in the cellar there's all sorts of obstacles like a garden hose and an upside down chair that now becomes like a mountain to him. But it kind of went on and on a little bit, even though it was tense and I enjoyed a lot of it. I did find myself glazing over at some of the chapters where it just really became a little bit too much. And also I found it kind of unrealistic, and this is not just about the science, but I kind of found it a little bit unrealistic because he really hurts himself. And how would somebody be able to go on like he did with that kind of pain? So, but still, it was very, very effective, and I didn't find it that off-putting. All in all, I just found it a really, really good read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 as well. So that comes highly recommended, and that's The Shrinking Man. Okay everyone, that's my reading update. I hope you all enjoyed that. If you did enjoy my content, please like and subscribe, and make a comment down in those dark spaces down below and let me know what you think. Have you read either of these novels? Is there any other books by Richard Matheson or his Alan Dean Foster that you think I would enjoy? Please let me know. But until next time, please look after yourselves, take care, keep those pages turning, and cheers.